Imagine waking up in a world where the government doesn't just, you know, dictate what you do.
Right.
Like they don't simply put up speed limits or levy taxes or enforce a standard penal code. I mean, imagine a regime that dictates exactly what is real, what is true, and even like the physical words available for you to think.
Yeah, it's a terrifying thought.
Welcome to this deep dive. Today, we are embarking on an exhaustive journey into George Orwell's 1984.
It's a text that really fundamentally redefines our understanding of authority.
Oh, absolutely.
Because when we look at the source material we've gathered today, which ranges from the granular details of daily life in Oceania to the secret manifestos of the ruling inner party, we are not looking at a standard dictatorship.
No, not at all.
Right. We are examining a highly sophisticated, multi-layered psychological operation aimed at the total eradication of the individual human mind.
Yeah, and our mission today is to decode what this text is really about, right? The intersection of power, truth, surveillance, and language. We are going to examine the actual mechanics of total control. So let's just set the stage with the opening of the text.
Good place to start.
We're introduced to Winston Smith on a cold, bright day in April, and the clocks are striking 13.
Yeah, 13. That single detail immediately establishes this sense of disorientation. We are definitely not in a recognizable reality.
Exactly. And Winston is 39. He's suffering from this painful varicose ulcer, and he's trudging into Victory Mansions. And the environment is just aggressively oppressive.
Oh, it's bleak.
Like the hallway smells of boiled cabbage and old rag mats. It's a world characterized by just, decay and dinginess.
Well, and the physical environment of Oceania serves a deliberate psychological function.
How so?
I mean, the crumbling architecture, the malfunctioning elevators, the constant shortages of basic necessities like, razor blades, all of this engineered scarcity forces the population into a perpetual state of low-level physical discomfort.
Oh, wow. So it's intentional.
Completely intentional. Because when an individual is entirely consumed by the petty frustrations of survival, their cognitive bandwidth for, say, philosophical inquiry or political resistance is severely diminished.
That makes so much sense.
Yeah, the grime and the cabbage smell, they aren't accidents of poor governance. They are features of a meticulously designed system.
That's wild. And, as he walks up the stairs, he passes a poster affixed to every single landing. It depicts this enormous face of a man about 45 with a heavy black mustache.
My brother.
Right, and the eyes in the picture are designed to follow you as you move. The caption beneath it reads, "Big Brother is watching you."
Yeah.
So I want you, the listener, to keep a central question in your mind as we navigate this material today. How does a regime not just force compliance from its citizens, but actively reshape human consciousness?
And to begin answering that, we really have to analyze the first layer of this control apparatus, which is the architecture of paranoia. The physical and psychological surveillance grid of Oceania relies on a piece of technology that the text calls the telescreen.
Yeah, so when Winston enters his flat, there's this oblong metal plaque on the wall. It's described as looking like a dulled mirror, and it's reading out a list of figures about pig iron production. And the crazy part is, he can turn the volume down, but there is no physical way to shut it off completely.
Never. The mechanism of the telescreen is profound because of its dual capacity. It receives and transmits simultaneously.
Like a two-way radio, but with video.
Exactly. Any sound Winston makes above a very low whisper is picked up. Furthermore, as long as he remains within the visual fields commanded by that metal plaque, every movement is scrutinized.
Wow.
But, the true psychological weight of the device lies in the uncertainty it generates.
Yeah, the text explicitly notes that there was no way of knowing whether you were being watched at any given moment. A citizen simply had to guess how often the thought police plugged into their individual wire.
Right.
It totally brings to mind the architectural concept of the panopticon, the prison design where cells form a circle around a central watchtower with mirrored windows.
Oh, absolutely. The panopticon is the perfect analytical framework for this.
Because the prisoners can never see the guards, so they must assume they are being watched at all times. They internalize the surveillance.
And the telescreen operates on the exact same principle of weaponized assumption. The thought police do not require the sheer manpower to monitor millions of citizens 24 hours a day.
Right, that would be impossible.
Exactly. The technology outsources the labor of policing to the citizens themselves. Orwell writes that citizens had to live and did live from habit that became instinct, in the assumption that every sound was overheard.
Wow. The external camera forces the creation of an internal guard.
Exactly.
But that internal guard must be so exhausting to maintain. I mean, it goes beyond just making sure you don't speak against the party. You have to monitor your own autonomic nervous system.
Yeah, you really do.
Like, the text introduces the concept of facecrime. A nervous outtake, an unconscious look of anxiety, a moment of inappropriate stillness. Just wearing an improper expression on your face is a punishable offense.
Because the body betrays the mind? If the state demands total ideological purity, then a flicker of doubt in the eyes is treason.
Unbelievable.
But the surveillance grid doesn't stop at the individual's self-policing or the technological reach of the telescreen.
No.
No, the most devastating mechanism of control is how the regime infiltrates the home by weaponizing the family unit itself.
Oh, right. We see this so vividly when Winston is asked to help his neighbor, Mrs. Parsons, with a blocked sink.
Yeah, that scene is chilling.
The Parsons apartment is permeated by that same smell of boiled cabbage and sweat. But the focal point of the scene is the children. A boy of 9 and a girl of 7 leaps out, dressed in the uniforms of the spies.
Mm-hmm.
And the boy aims a toy automatic pistol at Winston, screaming that he is a traitor, a thought criminal, a Eurasian spy.
And notice the dynamic in that room. The mother is described as having a look of helpless fright.
She's terrified of her own kids.
She is terrified of her own offspring. The text points out that within a year or two, those very children will be watching her night and day for symptoms of unorthodoxy.
Yeah.
The party has systematically taken the natural energy and playfulness of childhood and redirected it into ungovernable savagery that serves the state.
Because the children adore the party.
Mm.
They love the songs, the dummy rifles, the hangings of foreign prisoners. All of their ferocity is turned outward against the enemies of the state.
Right.
It's like totalitarianism survives by weaponizing this most intimate human bond. By incentivizing children to become informants, the state ensures that the home, historically humanity's safe harbor, becomes the primary site of paranoia.
It represents the complete destruction of horizontal loyalty.
What do you mean by horizontal loyalty?
Well, in a healthy society, you have horizontal loyalties to your family, your friends, your community. You look sideways, essentially.
Yeah.
The party recognizes that these bonds are a threat to their absolute power. If you love your child more than the party, your obedience is divided. Oh, I see. So they sever those bonds of natural affection and replace them with a vertical loyalty directly up to Big Brother.
Wow.
Yeah, hardly a week passes in Oceania without the newspaper celebrating a quote-unquote child hero who denounced their parents to the thought police based on an overheard remark.
That is just, it's so bleak. So we've established that physical surveillance is absolute, from the telescreen on the wall to the 9-year-old spy in the kitchen.
Right.
But watching bodies and punishing deviations is a reactive strategy. To achieve total control, a regime must be proactive. It has to engineer the internal emotional landscape of the populace.
Absolutely. A totalitarian system cannot sustain itself indefinitely on the cold threat of punishment alone.
Right.
Fear is a powerful deterrent, but it's fundamentally passive. People acclimate to fear, they become numb.
Yeah, you just get used to it.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So the party requires an active driving force. They must manufacture a continuous state of emotional hysteria to fuel the machinery of the state.
And the text provides a really harrowing illustration of this emotional engineering in the daily ritual known as the 2 minutes hate.
Yes.
Winston works in the records department, and every day the workers drag their chairs into the center of the hall to face a giant telescreen. The ritual always features the face of Emmanuel Goldstein.
The primal traitor.
Exactly, the primal traitor, the defiler of the party's purity.
And Goldstein's function in the narrative of Oceania is paramount. According to party doctrine, he is the source of all heresy, sabotage, and deviation.
Like the ultimate scapegoat.
Exactly. During the hate, his image is broadcast alongside enemy soldiers marching in rhythmic columns while he delivers this venomous attack on the party, demanding things like freedom of speech and freedom of the press.
And the physical reaction to this broadcast is immediate and terrifying. Like within 30 seconds, the audience breaks into uncontrollable exclamations of rage. People leap up and down, shouting at the top of their lungs to drown out Goldstein's voice. And even Winston, who secretly harbors doubts about Big Brother and suspects Goldstein might actually be speaking the truth, even he finds himself violently kicking his chair and screaming with the rest of them.
The psychology of the crowd is weaponized here. The horror of the 2 minutes hate is not that the citizens are forced to act a part, but that it is impossible to avoid joining in.
It's contagious.
Very. Orwell describes it as a hideous ecstasy of fear and vindictiveness, a desire to kill, to torture, to smash faces in. It acts as an electrical current sweeping through the room, overriding conscious thought and reducing the individual to a screaming, instinctual animal.
I mean, I am struggling to understand the sustainability of this.
How so?
Maintaining a state of fever-pitch rage requires a massive amount of psychological energy.
Hmm.
If you have a populace that is that wired, that volatile, aren't you playing with fire? Like, how does the party prevent this emotional blowtorch from eventually turning back on the system itself?
Well, that is the genius of the engineering. The party ensures that this rage remains an abstract, undirected emotion. It's highly fluid. Yeah, the text notes that Winston's hatred during the ritual can be switched from one object to another like the flame of a blow lamp.
Oh, wow.
Right. 1 second, he is directing his fury at Goldstein, and the very next second, he is projecting a violent, frenzied rage onto the dark-haired girl sitting in front of him, imagining horrific acts of violence against her.
Because he can't have her.
Exactly. The party captures the natural frustration stemming from their impoverished, dingy lives and provides a meticulously scheduled, highly specific target for its release.
And we get a deeper understanding of this, like this thermodynamics of emotion, later in the text through Julia.
Yes, Julia's perspective is crucial.
She possesses a brilliant, pragmatic understanding of the party's mechanisms. She explains to Winston why the party enforces chastity, specifically through organizations like the Junior Anti-Sex League.
Julia's analysis cuts right to the physiological root of the regime's power. She observes that physical intimacy and sexual fulfillment consume energy and leave an individual feeling peaceful and satisfied. And a satisfied individual is of no use to a totalitarian state. They cannot be whipped into a frenzy over production quotas or foreign wars.
She says that all the marching up and down, the cheering and the flag waving is simply sex gone sour.
Such a great line.
The party deliberately bottlenecks powerful, natural human instincts to create a reservoir of unfulfilled tension. They siphon that repressed energy off and convert it into war fever and leader worship.
It is a closed-loop system of emotional manipulation. You deprive the human being of natural connection. You induce a state of constant low-level hysteria through that deprivation, and then you offer the state as the only authorized release valve for that tension.
Wow. So the citizen becomes addicted to the anger because it's literally the only intense emotion they are legally permitted to feel.
Exactly.
So they control the body through the panopticon of the telescreen, and they control the heart by souring human connection into collective rage.
Mm-hmm.
But a regime claiming absolute infallibility faces a distinct problem, which is reality itself. Things go wrong. Predictions fail. Allies become enemies. If you want to maintain the illusion of godhood, you cannot just control the present. You must conquer the past.
Which leads us to the Ministry of Truth, or Minute True. This is the institutional engine of the party's epistemological control, and it's where Winston is employed.
Right.
The work done here represents one of the most profound philosophical concepts in the entire text.
I want to dig into the physical mechanics of this,
Right.
because it's not just a matter of censorship. It is active, constant recreation.
Yeah.
Winston sits in his cubicle with a device called a speakwrite. Small paper cylinders arrive via pneumatic tubes, containing instructions to alter past newspaper articles, speeches, and economic forecasts, so they align with current political reality.
Consider the example provided in the text involving a speech by Big Brother. Big Brother had predicted a military offensive in North Africa.
Okay.
But the actual offensive occurred in South India.
Oh.
Right. So Winston's task is to requisition the old copy of the Times, rewrite the speech so that Big Brother correctly predicts South India, and then submit the altered version to replace the original in the archives.
And the original document. It is pushed into an oblong slit in the wall, a memory hole, where it is carried by a current of warm air to enormous furnaces hidden deep within the building. It's incinerated.
Oh.
Gone. And this isn't an isolated incident. It's a continuous, minute-by-minute process involving armies of clerks, typography experts, and studios faking photographs. Every prediction is proven correct. No news item conflicting with current needs is permitted to remain on record.
The Ministry of Truth is engaged in the systematic eradication of objective reality. The party refuses to acknowledge this as forgery, though. They refer to it merely as rectifying slips, errors, and misprints.
That's convenient.
Right, but the philosophical implication is staggering. If all records tell the same tale, then the lie passes into history and becomes truth.
It's like if traditional dictatorships are a cage that traps the body, This system is a computer virus rewriting the mind's operating system.
Oh, that's a great analogy.
Imagine if a Wikipedia page was edited, but the entire Edit History tab was completely deleted, all physical servers holding backups were burned, and everyone who remembered the previous version was executed.
Yeah.
The new text doesn't just represent the current consensus, it fundamentally becomes the truth. The past is whatever the party says it is.
The party explicitly states this operating philosophy. Who controls the past controls the future, and who controls the present controls the past.
So dark.
But, to accept an ever-shifting past requires a specific, highly trained cognitive flexibility. This is the psychological mechanism known as doublethink.
Let's examine doublethink deeply, because it's the linchpin that holds this entire cognitive architecture together. It isn't just lying. Lying implies an awareness of the truth.
Right. Doublethink is the capacity to hold two contradictory beliefs in one's mind simultaneously, and to accept both of them.
How does that even work?
It's a conscious act of self-deception that immediately forgets the deception took place. You must tell deliberate lies while genuinely believing in them. You must forget any fact that has become inconvenient, and then, if it becomes necessary again, draw it back from oblivion for exactly as long as it is needed.
And the text provides incredible demonstrations of this.
Yeah.
Look at the creation of Comrade Ogilvy.
Yes.
Winston receives an order to rectify a speech honoring a disgraced inner-party member named Comrade Withers. Now, Withers has been vaporized. He is an unperson. Winston cannot simply alter the speech because Withers legally never existed.
Right.
So Winston invents a perfect, heroic party member out of thin air.
Comrade Ogilvy, a fabrication who refused all toys as a child except a drum and a submachine gun, took a vow of celibacy, designed a hand grenade, and died a heroic death in battle.
Just a perfect fictional hero.
With a few lines of dictated text and a forged photograph, Winston brings a man into existence.
Winston realizes he can create a dead man, even if he cannot create a living one. Comrade Ogilvy now exists in the historical record just as authentically as Charlemagne. And through doublethink, the citizens of Oceania will read about Ogilvy, revere him, and genuinely believe he lived and died for the party, while completely suppressing any memory of Comrade Withers.
But the most dramatic execution of doublethink occurs during Hate Week.
Oh, this scene is crazy.
It is. A speaker is on a platform, working the crowd into a frenzy about the atrocities of their enemy, Eurasia. Mid-sentence, a messenger hands the speaker a slip of paper. Without pausing, without even altering the syntax of his sentence, the speaker changes the name of the enemy from Eurasia to Eastasia.
And the crowd's reaction is the truly terrifying part. They don't pause in confusion. They seamlessly transition their rage. They suddenly notice that the banners and posters around the square have the quote-unquote wrong enemy on them. They blame it on sabotage by Goldstein's agents, and they tear them down, all while continuing to scream at Eastasia. It is an instantaneous, collective rewriting of reality in real time. Oceania is at war with Eastasia. Oceania has always been at war with Eastasia.
But Winston is deeply burdened by this process because his doublethink is flawed.
He remembers too much.
He remembers. He is tormented by the lingering fragments of objective truth.
Yeah.
And the defining example of this is the photograph of Jones, Aronson, and Rutherford.
Right. These were three original leaders of the revolution who were disgraced, forced to confess to treason on Eurasian soil, and eventually executed.
Yes.
Winston once held a piece of concrete evidence, a torn newspaper clipping, with a photograph proving that all three men were attending a party function in New York on the exact date they had confessed to being in Eurasia. It was undeniable proof that their confessions were fabricated.
And holding that photograph is a profound epistemological crisis for Winston. Well, it's a physical artifact of a reality that the party has declared non-existent. It proves that there is an external world with a fixed history that operates independently of the party's collective mind.
But out of terror, Winston dropped that photograph down a memory hole.
Yeah, he destroyed it himself.
But the knowledge that it existed haunts him. He realizes that if the party can declare that 2 and 2 make 5, and everyone believes it, then the physical world is entirely subjective.
Right.
This is why he clings to basic arithmetic in his diary. He writes, "Freedom is the freedom to say that 2 plus 2 make 4. If that is granted, all else follows." He is searching for a physical axiom that the party cannot incinerate.
Because if reality is not external, if reality exists only within the human mind and the party controls the human mind, then truth is entirely malleable.
Yeah.
And the most efficient way to control the mind, to prevent a citizen from even conceptualizing that 2 + 2 = 4, is to dismantle the very tool the mind uses to process thought.
Which brings us to the most insidious weapon in the party's arsenal. We've seen how they control behavior, emotion, and history. But what happens when they decide to control the internal architecture of thought itself? We must examine the mechanics of Newspeak.
The invention of Newspeak is arguably Orwell's most brilliant sociological insight.
It really is.
It's the official language of Oceania, and it operates on a linguistic principle entirely antithetical to the history of human communication. Its purpose is not to expand the horizons of human expression, but to drastically, violently shrink them.
And we get a masterclass in the philosophy of Newspeak during a scene in the canteen where Winston speaks with a philologist named Syme.
Ah, Syme.
Syme is working on the 11th edition of the Newspeak dictionary. He is an intellectual, and he is passionately, terrifyingly enthusiastic about his work. He tells Winston that the destruction of words is a beautiful thing.
And to understand the scope of this destruction, we have to look at the structural mechanics of the language. The text divides Newspeak into 3 distinct classifications, the A, B, and C vocabularies. Each serves a highly specific function in narrowing human consciousness.
So the A vocabulary is dedicated to the business of everyday life.
Right.
Eating, drinking, working, getting dressed. But the crucial manipulation is that these words have been entirely stripped of all ambiguities and secondary meanings.
Completely.
Like, the word free still exists in the A vocabulary, but it can only be used in a strictly physical or chemical sense. You can say the dog is free from lice, or the field is free from weeds. You can no longer say politically free or intellectually free because the concepts of political and intellectual liberty no longer exist.
Right.
The word has been surgically separated from its philosophical weight.
And then the B vocabulary is where the political indoctrination is explicitly codified. These are compound words deliberately constructed to impose a specific mental attitude upon the speaker.
Give me an example.
Well, words like good think, which means orthodoxy, or crime think, which is thought crime, or joy camp, which is the Newspeak term for a forced labor camp.
Yeah. The rhythm of the B vocabulary is fascinating too.
Yeah.
The words are designed to be easily pronounced staccato syllables. They merge complex actions and moral judgments into a single, indivisible concept. By combining the words, they force the speaker to accept the party's moral framework.
Precisely. And finally, there is the C vocabulary, which consists strictly of scientific and technical terms. However, these terms are heavily segregated by discipline. A biologist would have no access to the technical vocabulary of a physicist.
Interesting.
And there is no overarching word for science because the very concept of an empirical method of thought, independent of the party's declarations, is strictly forbidden.
And Syme explains the ultimate philosophical goal behind this linguistic butchery. He asks Winston, why maintain a word like bad when the word ungood functions perfectly?
Right.
Why have a vast array of vague adjectives like excellent or splendid when you can simply use plus good or double plus good? By systematically eliminating synonyms and antonyms, they are shrinking the dictionary every single year.
Syme declares that by the year 2050, the very concept of thought crime will be literally impossible. You cannot commit a heresy if you do not possess the vocabulary to formulate the thought.
That's terrifying.
If every complex philosophical nuance is reduced to a rigid, single-definition word, the mind is trapped in a conceptual straitjacket.
But this relies heavily on the theory of linguistic determinism, right? The idea that language entirely dictates the boundaries of cognition. Syme wants articulate speech to issue directly from the larynx, completely bypassing the higher brain centers. They even have a word for it. Duck speak. To quack like a duck.
Duck speak is a brilliant encapsulation of the party's goal. If applied to an enemy, it's a harsh insult. But if applied to a party orator who is spouting orthodox opinions automatically, flawlessly, without requiring a single moment of conscious reflection, it is the highest form of praise.
Wow.
They want ideological conformity to be as autonomic as breathing.
Okay, I have to push back on Syme's ultimate conclusion here, though. Let's look at the physiological reality of the human animal. If you delete the word rebellion from the dictionary, do you actually eradicate the physical sensation of oppression? Winston's body is actively rebelling throughout the text, his ulcer, his cough, his physical revulsion to his environment. If you take away the words, do you prevent the rebellion, or do you just leave the citizen in a state of agonizing silent frustration?
You're highlighting a profound vulnerability in the theory, and it's something the text grapples with extensively. Winston's mute protest in his own bones suggests that the physical body recognizes the unnatural state of Oceania even when the mind is starved of vocabulary.
Right.
However, the tragedy the text presents is that without language, that physical revulsion remains impotent angst.
Impotent angst.
Yeah, you cannot organize a resistance, you cannot construct an alternative political philosophy, and you cannot even articulate your own suffering to another human being without the necessary words. The frustration remains trapped within the individual skull.
Which isolates the individual entirely. The telescreens separate you from your family, the memory holes separate you from history, and Newspeak separates you from your own internal reasoning.
Exactly.
Winston understands all of this. He observes the mechanisms, but he is still plagued by a terrifying unknown. He writes in his diary, "I understand how W. I do not understand WHY."
And that burning question of why is the precipice that leads us into the final, darkest phase of the source material. We must examine the anatomy of pure power, which is revealed when Winston is finally captured and taken to the Ministry of Love.
So Winston and Julia are arrested by the thought police, having been betrayed by a man they trusted. In the windowless cells of Minilove, Winston is confronted by O'Brien.
Right.
For years, Winston harbored a desperate belief that O'Brien was a covert member of the Brotherhood, a secret resistance movement. Instead, O'Brien is revealed to be a loyal, high-ranking member of the inner party, and he becomes Winston's chief interrogator and torturer.
The sequences involving O'Brien are not merely scenes of physical abuse, they are profound philosophical dialogues.
Oh, absolutely.
O'Brien occupies a terrifyingly complex role. He is Winston's tormentor, but he also acts as an inquisitor, a teacher, and strangely, a protector. O'Brien's goal is not simply to extract a confession or mete out punishment. He intends to cure Winston.
But before we delve into the physical torment, we must understand the political theory O'Brien forces Winston to confront. Earlier, Winston was given a copy of, quote-unquote, the book, supposedly authored by Emmanuel Goldstein, which details the mechanics of oligarchical collectivism. O'Brien reveals he actually helped author this text, using it as a honey trap for dissidents.
And the political framework outlined in the book is essential for understanding the inner party's motivations. It posits that all of human history is a cyclical struggle between three groups: the high, the middle, and the low.
Right, classic class struggle.
Exactly. The high seek to maintain their dominance. The middle seek to usurp the high, usually by enlisting the low under the guise of fighting for liberty and equality. Once the middle succeeds, they establish themselves as the new high, thrusting the low back into servitude, and the cycle begins anew.
But the inner party achieved something unprecedented. They figured out how to arrest the cycle and freeze history permanently.
Yes, they did.
They realized that the vulnerability of past ruling classes was individualism. Wealth and privilege are easily targeted when they are held by individuals. The inner party secures its absolute dominance through collectivism. They own everything jointly. There is no individual property, and therefore no individual wealth to be seized.
Furthermore, they utilize the mechanism of perpetual warfare. The three superstates, Oceania, Eurasia, and Eastasia, are engaged in a continuous, unwinnable conflict.
Always at war.
Right. And the economic purpose of this war is not to conquer territory, but to destroy the surplus products of human labor.
To keep people poor.
Exactly. If machinery produces an abundance of goods, the standard of living rises. If the standard of living rises, the low become educated, realize they do not need the high, and overthrow them. Perpetual war ensures that the populace remains poor, exhausted, and wholly dependent on the state, thereby cementing the hierarchy.
Winston understands this economic and social mechanism, but he still demands the why. While strapped to a torture device, with O'Brien controlling a dial that inflicts agonizing pain, Winston guesses that the party clings to power for the good of the majority.
Right.
He suggests that perhaps they believe humans are too weak to govern themselves and require the firm hand of the state.
And O'Brien punishes Winston severely for that answer. He strips away every facade of benevolence, every pretense of historical necessity. He tells Winston the absolute naked truth regarding the regime's motivation. The party seeks power entirely for its own sake.
Just power.
Just power. They are not interested in the good of others, wealth, luxury, or a utopian future. They are interested solely in pure power.
O'Brien explicitly distinguishes the party from past totalitarian regimes, citing the Nazis and the communists. He calls them cowards and hypocrites, claiming they seize power with the false promise of eventually relinquishing it to create a paradise. The inner party harbors no such delusions. They recognize that no one ever seizes power with the intention of giving it up. Power is not a means to an end. It is the end itself.
The object of persecution is persecution. The object of torture is torture. The object of power is power. O'Brien defines power very specifically for Winston. It is not control over the physical environment. Power is power over human beings.
Over the mind.
Above all, over the mind. O'Brien asserts a terrifying philosophy of collective solipsism. He claims that reality is not external. Reality exists only in the mind of the party, which is collective and immortal. Whatever the party holds to be truth is truth.
And O'Brien demonstrates this through the horrific breaking of Winston's perception. He holds up 4 fingers. He asks Winston how many fingers he sees. Winston, relying on objective reality, says 4.
Right.
O'Brien turns the pain dial. The agony is described as reality-shattering, blinding pain that tears at Winston's joints. O'Brien demands that Winston see 5 fingers.
This is the crux of the party's absolute authority. O'Brien does not want Winston to simply say there are 5 fingers to stop the pain. Submission is insufficient.
Because if he's just saying it, he's lying.
Exactly. If Winston secretly knows there are 4, his internal mind remains his own. O'Brien tortures him until his cognitive faculties physically fracture, until the pain and the manipulation warp his perception to the point where he actively, genuinely sees 5 fingers.
O'Brien explains that the party does not destroy heretics because they resist. They convert them. They capture the inner mind and reshape it entirely. They burn all evil and illusion out of the dissident, bringing them over to the party's side genuinely, heart and soul.
No martyrs.
No martyrs allowed. They wash the heretic clean before they execute them, ensuring that the dissident dies loving Big Brother.
But to achieve that complete conversion, the party must eradicate the deepest, most fundamental loyalty a human being possesses. For Winston, that is his love for Julia. Even after months of torture, degradation, and cognitive destruction, Winston clings to the fact that he has not betrayed Julia. He has confessed to crimes, he has implicated her, but he has not stopped loving her in his heart. This necessitates the final, ultimate horror of Room 101.
Right, Room 101. It's located deep underground in the Ministry of Love, and it does not contain a standard torture device. It contains the worst thing in the world, bespoke and tailored to the specific primal phobia of the individual prisoner.
It's pure psychological terror.
The party's surveillance is so absolute that they know precisely what terrifies you in your darkest nightmares. For Winston, it is rats.
O'Brien brings in a specially constructed wire cage containing 2 enormous starving rats. The cage is fitted with a mask designed to strap directly onto Winston's face.
Just, so awful.
O'Brien explains that when he presses a lever, the door will slide up and the rats will shoot out and burrow into Winston's face. The psychological terror is overwhelming, bypassing all rational thought and striking directly at the reptilian brain.
And as the cage is brought closer and closer to his face, Winston realizes that his physical courage has entirely evaporated. The horror is absolute. The text describes a frantic, desperate search within his own mind for a way to save himself. He realizes there is only one escape. He must place another human being between himself and the rats.
And he screams the words that break him forever. Do it to Julia. Do it to Julia. Not me. Julia. I don't care what you do to her. Tear her face off. Strip her to the bones. Not me. Julia. Not me.
Wow. In that moment, the betrayal is complete. It is not just words spoken under duress. To stop the rats, Winston had to mean it. He had to genuinely desire that the woman he loved suffer this unimaginable horror so that he could be spared. He severed the final tether to his own humanity.
O'Brien's goal is achieved. By forcing Winston to betray Julia, he has hollowed Winston out completely. The self has been destroyed. The private sanctuary of the heart has been breached and burned. There is nothing left inside Winston Smith. He is an empty vessel, ready to be filled with the absolute orthodoxy of the party.
It called back to the terrifying metaphor O'Brien presents earlier in the interrogation. He tells Winston that if he wants a picture of the future, he should imagine a boot stamping on a human face forever.
Forever.
When confronting this text, one must ask, is this sustainable? O'Brien boasts that they have abolished the laws of nature and can twist reality into whatever shape they choose. Does the narrative imply that the party will truly rule forever, or is this the ultimate delusion of absolute power?
Orwell presents a deeply pessimistic prognosis. He has constructed a perfectly closed system. There are no external forces capable of threatening the regime, as the perpetual war is a balanced stalemate.
Right.
Internally, any threat of rebellion is preemptively dismantled through surveillance, emotional redirection, historical falsification, and the linguistic lobotomy of Newspeak. Winston tries to argue that the intrinsic spirit of man will eventually rise up and defeat the party.
And O'Brien's response.
O'Brien counters that if Winston represents the spirit of man, he is the last of his kind, and his kind is extinct. The text forces us to confront the terrifying plausibility that a system flawlessly engineered to perpetuate its own power, unconstrained by any reliance on objective truth or human empathy, could indeed sustain itself indefinitely.
And we see the harrowing proof of this in the conclusion of Winston's journey. After the complete destruction of his internal world in Room 101, he is released back into the dingy reality of Oceania. He is a broken shell of a man. We find him sitting at the Chestnut Tree Cafe, a known haunt for disgraced, hollowed-out party members.
He's just drinking victory gin, his mind wandering through fragmented, irrelevant thoughts. He plays a game of chess, he listens to the telescreen, and when a broadcast announces a massive military victory for Oceania and Africa, the music swells, and Winston gazes up at the enormous face of Big Brother.
The final lines of the text are some of the most devastating ever written. 2 gin-scented tears trickle down the sides of his nose. But it was all right. Everything was all right. The struggle was finished. He had won the victory over himself. He loved Big Brother.
His tragedy is not that he's executed. The physical death is irrelevant to the party. The tragedy is that his soul has been murdered, and he has been rebuilt to love his executioner.
Man, let us synthesize the monumental scope of what we've analyzed today. We have traced the complete architecture of total control. It begins with the external panopticon, a surveillance state, utilizing the telescreen to enforce self-policing, penetrating the sanctuary of the home, and weaponizing children to destroy horizontal loyalty.
It advances into the engineering of the human emotional spectrum, suppressing natural affection and transmuting that pent-up energy into collective, directed rage through mandatory rituals like the 2 minutes hate.
It solidifies its infallibility through the ministry of truth, systematically incinerating objective history and enforcing the cognitive dissonance of doublethink, rendering the past a subjective construct of the state.
It preemptively neutralizes rebellion by aggressively shrinking the vocabulary of the populace through Newspeak, physically amputating the linguistic tools necessary to conceptualize resistance.
And it culminates in the terrifying philosophical pursuit of pure, unadulterated power by the inner party, a pursuit that utilizes the bespoke psychological horror of Room 101 to obliterate personal loyalty, completely colonizing the individual soul until the citizen genuinely loves the boot that stamps on their face.
It is a meticulous, comprehensive dismantling of what it means to be human.
We have covered immense heavy ground today. But before we conclude, I want to leave you, the listener, with a final provocative thought to mull over. Throughout this deep dive, we focused on the monumental systemic forces of control.
Right.
But there is a granular concept buried within the rules of Newspeak that warrants intense personal reflection. The concept of crime stop.
Crime stop is defined in the text as the faculty of stopping short, as though by instinct, at the threshold of any dangerous thought. The party describes it as protective stupidity.
Protective stupidity.
Yeah.
It is the mind's ability to instinctively develop a blind spot the moment a train of logic threatens to lead toward an unorthodox conclusion. You fail to grasp analogies, you fail to perceive logical errors, you simply shut down cognitive processing before the thought can fully form because the implications are too dangerous to acknowledge.
Yeah.
I want you to look inward. In our modern reality, an era defined by algorithmic echo chambers, intense social polarization, and the overwhelming pressure to conform to specific ideological narratives, do we ever engage in our own personal crime stop?
It is a vital question. Do we instinctively short-circuit our own critical thinking when we encounter evidence that contradicts our preferred worldview? Do we refuse to follow a valid train of thought simply to avoid the profound discomfort of stepping outside the accepted consensus of our peer group?
Do we choose protective stupidity over objective reality because it is easier, safer, and keeps us insulated within our tribes? Because if we willingly put on the cognitive blinders, if we voluntarily incinerate inconvenient facts in our own mental memory holes, then the architecture of control doesn't require a telescreen or a top police. We are actively building the prison ourselves. Something for you to ponder long after this deep dive ends.